Welcome back to the Paranormal State, Washington, and UFO UAP. With Makāula Nakae, a lifelong experiencer and ET contactee since 1990. Today's episode, Atomic Arc of 1945. From the Trinity detonation to Nagasaki and the global UAP shadow. The summer of 1945 marked the most violent and consequential threshold in human history. In less than a month, the United States unlocked the atomic mechanism, deployed it across the desert of New Mexico, and leveled 2 Japanese cities to bring World War II to a cataclysmic close. Yet, when historians trace the logistics of the Manhattan Project from the Trinity detonation on July 16, 1945, through the atomic bombing of Hiroshima, and up to the Nagasaki bombing on August 9, 1945, a parallel, highly classified narrative emerges. Across the Pacific Theater, military flight crews, radar operators, and naval personnel documented an unprecedented surge of unexplained aerial phenomena, trailing every stage of the atomic supply chain, from the American West Coast across the Pacific Ocean and directly into the skies over southern Japan. Phase I, the Trinity detonation and the western coastline, July 1945. The journey of the atomic age began in the isolated desert of the Jornada del Muerto in New Mexico, but its energetic footprint spanned the entire American continent. At 5:29 a.m. on July 16, 1945, the plutonium core, manufactured directly at Hanford, Washington, and assembled at Los Alamos, detonated with the force of 21 kilotons of TNT. The blinding flash lit up the skies from southern Colorado to the Mexican border. The assertion that military radar installations along the Pacific coastline, stretching from Washington state down through Oregon and California, tracked anomalous high-altitude returns around the dawn of the atomic age, points to a deeply documented intersection of signals intelligence, wartime air defense networks, and the sudden release of artificial radioactive isotopes into the atmosphere. When the Manhattan Project transitioned from theoretical physics to brute force engineering, it generated an unprecedented footprint, not only on the ground but across the electromagnetic and atmospheric spectrum. During World War II and the immediate post-war window, the U.S. West Coast was one of the most heavily fortified and electronically monitored zones on Earth. Driven by the lingering threat of Japanese long-range reconnaissance and carrier-based incursions, the Army Air Forces had established a dense interlocking web of early warning radar stations along the Pacific coastline. These systems, operating primarily on high-frequency VHF and UHF bands, continuously swept the offshore approaches and interior mountain passes. Operators at installations ranging from Tatoosh Island and the Hanford-adjacent sector in Washington down to Camp Adair in Oregon and the massive coastal defense grids of San Francisco and San Diego were rigorously trained to identify standard targets, domestic commercial traffic, military training flights, and weather anomalies. Yet, beginning in the final months of World War II and accelerating sharply toward the summer of 1947, radar crews began logging high-altitude returns that defied standard tracking profiles. The physical processes occurring at Hanford, Washington, Los Alamos, New Mexico, and the Trinity site, Jornada del Muerto, were not localized box-contained reactions. They altered the immediate local environment in ways that modern physics and presumably external observers could detect across vast distances. The immense energy discharge of an atomic detonation, or even the large-scale industrial separation of plutonium-239 via massive electromagnetic and chemical cascades, releases intense bursts of ionizing radiation, gamma rays, and localized electromagnetic anomalies. Ionization columns created by heavy radiological processing and nuclear testing altered the electrical permittivity of the atmosphere. Radar technicians frequently reported phantom ghost targets, sudden electronic saturation, or anomalous targets that moved at speeds exceeding Mach 1 long before conventional jets could achieve such velocity. The convergence of these radar tracks near key military transit hubs along the West Coast suggests that whatever intelligence operated the unidentified craft was tracking the energetic umbilical cord of the Manhattan Project. The radar returns were densest precisely where the logistics chain was most active, bridging the plutonium production plants of the Pacific Northwest with the testing and assembly grounds of the American Southwest. The historical paper trail from regional defense commands during this era reflects a profound institutional struggle to classify what the radar scopes were showing. Declassified logs from Western Defense Command units indicate that fast-moving, high-altitude targets detected off the coasts of Washington and Oregon were frequently intercepted visually by P-61 Black Widow night fighters or P-38 Lightnings, only for the pilots to report objects that could hover silently, accelerate vertically, or vanish from radar scopes instantaneously. These 1945 to 1946 coastal radar logs form the invisible foundation for the mass sightings of June and July 1947, including Kenneth Arnold's sighting near Mount Rainier and the Richland-Hanford waves. Long before the public coined the term flying saucer, military radar operators along the Pacific perimeter knew that an unrecognized technological presence was actively mapping, shadowing, and evaluating America's descent into the atomic era. Phase 2, the Pacific Pipeline and the Tinian Transit, late July, early August 1945. Once the atomic components were forged, they were rushed across land and sea to their final operational deployment zones. The enriched uranium components for Little Boy and the plutonium core for Fat Man were shipped under maximum security. The cruiser USS Indianapolis delivered materials to the forward air base on Tinian Island in the northern Mariana Islands, while specialized C-54 transport aircraft airlifted core components across the vast expanse of the Pacific. The transit of the Manhattan Project's decisive materials across the Pacific Ocean during late July and early August 1945, exemplified by the historic high-speed dash of the heavy cruiser USS Indianapolis delivering Little Boy components to Tinian Island, occurred under conditions of extreme operational secrecy. Yet, contemporary accounts, declassified naval logs, and military pilot debriefings from the final months of World War II reveal that these high-value convoys were not navigating empty waters. As fleets and transport aircraft moved through the vast expanse of the Western Pacific, they intersected with an active, silent layer of surveillance that mirrored the high strangeness already tracking the atomic facilities on the American mainland. The transport network moving weapons-grade uranium and plutonium components from West Coast ports through Pearl Harbor and onward to the Mariana Islands represented the single most critical supply chain in military history. Vessels like the Indianapolis traveled at breakneck speeds, often unescorted or operating outside standard screen formations to maintain absolute operational security. Navigating the Philippine Sea and the Central Marianas meant operating in waters heavily contested by Japanese submarines and kamikaze threats. Consequently, surface lookouts, bridge watch officers, and radar tracking teams were hypervigilant, scanning every sector of the horizon and sky for hostile contacts. Amid this heightened state of wartime alertness, naval personnel and long-range patrol bomber crews, such as PB-4Y Privateer and PB-Y Catalina units, reported anomalous encounters that defied conventional identification. Crews logging night navigation flights across the mid-Pacific frequently described luminous, self-luminous orbs or silent, cylindrical shapes that would effortlessly match the speed and heading of multi-engine transport aircraft or shadow naval task forces from a fixed standoff distance. Just as radar operators on the West Coast logged phantom returns near nuclear processing zones, ships along the Pacific transit route occasionally reported sudden compass deviations, erratic radio frequency interference, and radar sweeps picking up high-speed targets that executed impossible 90-degree vector changes without slowing down. Unlike conventional enemy aircraft or kamikaze pilots, these anomalous objects exhibited no hostile intent, weapons deployment, or tactical aggression. Instead, their behavior suggested a passive, systematic monitoring profile, maintaining a persistent watch over the maritime highway, carrying humanity's most potent technological pivot point. This aerial shadowing culminated at the forward deployment hubs in the Mariana Islands. Northfield on Tinian, where the Enola Gay and Boxcar were loaded over the subterranean atomic bomb pits, was the staging ground for the final flights over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Military intelligence files from the immediate post-war occupation of the Pacific Islands indicate a sharp uptick in sightings reported by flight crews returning from bombing and reconnaissance missions over Japan. These airmen describe silent, disk-like formations hanging motionless above the cloud decks near the strike zones, confirming that whatever intelligence tracked the cargo across the open ocean was present to witness its devastating culmination. Phase 3. The Nagasaki Detonation and the Skies over Kyushu, August 9, 1945. The culmination of the war brought the atomic age to the Japanese home islands, and with it an immediate localized explosion of high strangeness. The mission of August 9, 1945, which culminated in the detonation of the Fat Man plutonium core over Japan, was governed by a strict matrix of military strategy, geography, and meteorology. The selection of Kokura as the primary target on Nagasaki, as the secondary target, was not arbitrary. It represented a calculated choice by the Manhattan Project's Target Committee. While the ultimate diversion between the two cities came down to a matter of minutes, clouds, and visibility. Kokura, now part of modern-day Kyushu, was selected by the Target Committee in May 1945 for several specific reasons that aligned with the psychological and strategic goals of the military leadership. Kokura housed one of the largest and most vital military-industrial complexes in western Japan, the massive Kokura Army Arsenal, which manufactured munitions, ordnance, and heavy artillery for the Imperial Japanese Army. Because the atomic bombs were engineered to be detonated via precise radar-assisted or visual drops to maximize blast efficiency and shockwave reflection over urban terrain, the Target Committee required a major urban area adjacent to military targets. Kokura's dense layout fit these criteria. Located on the northern tip of Kyushu, Kokura was a critical transportation and manufacturing hub, making its destruction a devastating blow to Japanese industrial capacity and morale. Nagasaki, situated on the western coast of Kyushu, served as the designated backup target due to its unique geographical and industrial profile. Nagasaki was one of the largest seaports in southern Japan and home to the massive Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, shipyards, steelworks, and torpedo manufacturing plants. Interestingly, Nagasaki's geography, surrounded by hills and split by the Urakami River Valley, was initially considered less than ideal by some target planners because the surrounding terrains would theoretically contain and partially absorb the lateral shockwave of the blast. However, its heavy concentration of industry infrastructure made it the premier secondary option when primary targets were obscured. On the morning of August 9, 1945, the B-29 Superfortress Boxer, piloted by Major Charles Sweeney, departed Tinian carrying Fat Man. Accompanying weather reconnaissance planes flew ahead to report conditions over the target zones. When Boxcar reached the skies above Kokura, the crew encountered a hostile environment. Kokura was heavily obscured by a combination of morning clouds, haze, and thick smoke drifting from nearby fires caused by a conventional firebombing raid carried out by American -29s on the neighboring city of Yahata the previous day. Major Sweeney made 3 separate bombing passes over Kokura, attempting to locate the target visually as ordered by command guidelines. Low fuel reserves, failing fuel transfer pumps, and mounting flak from anti-aircraft batteries pushed the aircraft to its operational limit. With dwindling fuel threatening their ability to return to friendly territory, Sweeney made the critical decision to abandon Kokura and divert toward the secondary target, Nagasaki. Upon arrival over Nagasaki, initial cloud cover also threatened the mission, but a momentary break in the clouds over the Urakami Valley provided the visual opening required for the bomb bay doors to open, setting off the final atomic detonation of the war. At 11:02 a.m., Fat Man detonated 1,650 feet above the city, instantly obliterating the industrial heart of Nagasaki and killing tens of thousands of people. The cessation of hostilities in August 1945 did not quiet the skies over the Japanese home islands. Rather, it initiated a period of intense, highly sensitive aerial surveillance that deeply alarmed the occupying Allied military command. In the days immediately surrounding the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and escalating dramatically through the early years of the Allied occupation, American military aircrews flying strategic reconnaissance, mapping, and patrol missions over Kyushu, Honshu, and the Inland Sea logged a startling volume of encounters with unexplained aerial phenomena. These encounters bridged the wartime Foo Fighter phenomena of Europe and the Pacific with a modern UFO wave that would explode globally in 1947. providing military intelligence officers with chilling evidence that the atomic bomb had attracted an external technological presence. As 5th Air Force units and naval aviation squadrons established operational bases across occupied Japan, moving into fields near Tokyo, Osaka, and Fukuoka, air crews routinely traversed the devastated urban centers of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. What they witnessed in the upper atmosphere above these atomic blast sites defied conventional postwar intelligence categories. Pilots flying B-29 Superfortresses, P-61 Black Widows, and photographic reconnaissance variants reported encountering clusters of translucent, metallic, or intensely luminous disc-shaped objects. These craft frequently flew in structured geometric formations, completely ignoring prevailing high-altitude jet streams or wind vectors. Observers noted that these anomalies were not randomly distributed. They concentrated heavily around demilitarized zones, naval yards, and former imperial military installations, but most intensely around the scorched corridors of western and southern Japan, precisely where the nuclear weapons had altered the physical and electromagnetic landscape. When fighter groups attempted to close distance or vector toward these objects, the anomalies displayed performance characteristics far exceeding any known human aircraft of the era. They could accelerate vertically at breathtaking speeds, execute instantaneous 90-degree turns without banking, or simply fade from visual range while remaining locked on airborne radar scopes. For military intelligence analysts tasked with compiling post-war security reports, the reports flowing out of occupied Japan carried an eerie, undeniable familiarity. They mirrored the exact anomalies logged back home over the nuclear reservation of Hanford, Washington, and the uranium enrichment complexes at Oak Ridge, Tennessee. In both the American Pacific Northwest and the ruins of industrial Japan, the common denominator was the handling, testing, or detonation of fissile material. High-ranking intelligence officers within the Far East Air Force's FEAF realized that these sightings could not be dismissed as stray Japanese secret weapons or atmospheric illusions. The objects were behaving with deliberate, calculated curiosity toward humanity's nuclear footprint. The proliferation of these sightings across the theater forced the U.S. military to institute strict reporting protocols long before Project Sign or Project Blue Book were formally established. Debriefing officers at bases across Honshu and Kyushu were instructed to classify encounters involving anomalous aerial objects under broad administrative headings or suppress them entirely to prevent public panic and avoid acknowledging that Allied air defense was entirely vulnerable to non-human technology. The convergence of radar tracks on the west coast of the United States in 1945, the maritime shadow over the Pacific during the transit of the Indianapolis, and the persistent disk formations hovering over post-war Hiroshima and Nagasaki painted a unified picture. To military command, the message was stark. Humanity had crossed an irreversible technological threshold, and an external intelligence was actively cataloging every phase of our atomic evolution. The arc from the Trinity tests to the skies of Nagasaki established a permanent geopolitical and paranormal reality. Wherever humanity split the atom, whether in the laboratories of New Mexico, the reactors of Washington State, the transit hubs of the Pacific, or the devastated skies of Japan, unidentified aerial phenomena were there to witness it. The global theater of World War II was not just a human conflict. It was the crucible that drew the unblinking, eternal gaze of an intelligence watching us step across the threshold of cosmic annihilation. To be continued. Watch and listen. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full podcast now. Explore the archive Cosmic Awakening Volume 1, 1991, Peru, Journey into the Unknown. Sacred Valley of the Incas. Volume 2, Ascension 2012, The Golden Alchemy. Part 3, The First Contact and the Paranormal State. Join the journey. New episodes drop periodically. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 10 to 30-minute exploration into the evolution of ufology, perfect for your daily plunge into decoding hidden messages from outer space, designed to raise awareness and foster human evolution. Subscribe to support your inner development. Thumbs up to help push our channel through the algorithm. Comment below. Share your thoughts on today's episode.